Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. And we're so happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Chief Kevin Quinn. Chief Quinn has been a firefighter for many, many years, represented volunteer firefighters as the chairman of the National Volunteer Fire Council, which is a large organization that represents over 70% of the firefighters in the U.S. who serve as volunteers here. And recently joined us in Kenya for our last training symposium down in Mombasa. So we're really blessed to have Chief Quinn here today to talk about incident command as it relates to structure fires. So we'll jump into that in just a few moments. But before we get into today's training and things, I'm going to pass things over to Errol Sianga. Errol is Africa Fire Mission's fire safety advocate, and he's going to get us started with a few words of encouragement.
Thank you very much, Chief Mike. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Good morning. Uh, I presume good night. Not yet. But before we begin our today's lesson, I'd like to pick a word of encouragement from one of the verses, the book of Romans, chapter 15, from verse 5. It says, "When the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the strength, give you the same attitude of mind towards each other that Christ Jesus had." So each and every time we go out there to work, to um, socialize, we need to encourage each other so that as we are working, we need to have one same mind, and also we need to also hold each other. Uh, at times, as human beings, we might fall short very many times. We are not perfect 100%, but in our imperfections, all of us need to embrace each other. And also, we watch our words and we watch our actions in everything we do so that we move as a unit. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mike.
Alrighty, thank you, Errol. Appreciate you always coming and joining us to share those words of encouragement and all the other work that you're doing to help advance firefighters from throughout all of Africa. Before I get started with today's training, let me just touch on one or two quick administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, you'll receive a certificate of attendance for today's training. If you get cut off or you can't stick around for all that time, there's some other ways that you can earn that certificate of attendance. Please head over to our webpage at www.africafiremission.org. Go to the resources tab, and under training materials, you'll find a link to our Google Drive, where you'll be able to find recordings of today's training as well as all the other trainings that we've done so far this year. If you watch the video and answer a few questions to demonstrate that you watched the whole video and that you learned something, I can send you a certificate of attendance for those classes as well. If you're sharing your screen with someone else today, it's a great way to take the class and not use so much data. Go ahead and email me with their name, and I'll get them a certificate of attendance as well. The name on those certificates is the name that you're using here is your screen name, so if you'd like to make any adjustments to that, please go ahead and do that now. Uh, I'll invite you to stick around when we get finished here at the top of the hour. We'll transition into our tea time where you'll be able to ask questions about today's training or anything else that might be on your mind. It's a great opportunity to do a little bit of networking. So just if you've got the bundles, I invite you to stick around as we wrap things up later on today. With that, I'm going to pass things over to Chief Kevin to get us started with today's training.
All right, thank you, Mike, Errol, and welcome everybody. I'm very excited to be here. I'm actually honored to be here. And Mike's going to advance my slides today because I don't have that capability as we sit. But I'm going to be discussing today incident command, a checklist, and specifically on structure fires. And then Errol shared with us earlier in the recording prior to you all coming on that they had a fire in his area and two young children passed away in that fire. So I'd like to take a moment of silence for those two five-year olds that passed. Thank you. I'm going to start out with this slide with a fire hydrant on the slide. Something that I didn't see much of in when I was in Africa and in Kenya and in Mombasa. But in the United States, as Mike indicated, 67% of our firefighters are volunteers, and most of those volunteers are in the rural areas. So we don't have a lot of fire hydrants in those areas. So most of the United States doesn't have that water capability. We're carrying water on our trucks as you are. So next slide, Mike. We are all looking at depending upon firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics to do the work to protect people. I'm going to today cover your response and the response that we may have here in the United States. I'm going to try to make it a dual presentation so that you kind of have a little bit of thought. As we go through today, I want you, no matter what your position is, if you're an officer, a firefighter, an EMT, or a paramedic, or commander, I want you to think as I do as the incident commander. I want you to put yourself in that position today as we go through this presentation. Next slide. Your response. Your response is quite different than my response. I'm in a community in the state of Rhode Island, which is between New York and Boston. The state of Rhode Island is the smallest state in the United States, and I have a population of about 32,000 people, but I have a lot of resources at hand. We have 9 stations in my town, 8 in my district, and I have a number of firefighters that will respond at any given call. You, on the other hand, for the most part, have a single engine with 4 to 6 firefighters with limited liters of water, and you have a lot of life safety concerns, as Errol pointed out this morning, with those 2 victims dying of smoke inhalation. Next slide. When you look at your fire, your resources, and the level of your emergency response, and this is a picture from your airport fire, it was a major incident. You had limited resources, those that were at that fire, and they had to pull in from wherever they could to bring in mutual aid and other resources because of the limited manpower. There were many challenges, but you, wherever you are, as an incident commander, you may be faced with this major complex fire sometime. Next slide. When you look at an incident commander and you look at the initial essential tasks that you must do, the commanders must do items. I wrote down, and it's difficult to read, but I wanted this to be as real in response in real time as possible. What you're looking at in that picture is my command board, which controls everything I do. Now, this for you, if I could put this up here, this, a pen and a pencil and a piece of paper can be your command board. So we're going to be talking about my command board today, but your command board can simply be a piece of paper. Many times when you go to an incident, I would recommend strongly that you have a pencil or a pen with you, because if you're the incident commander, you need some documentation. Now, this list, and if you can kind of look at these items in the middle of that picture, resource assignments. You may have 4 to 6 people coming. They all need to have a job to do. They may know what their job is, but it may have to change. We're always looking at life safety as our priority. Our life safety, as the incident commander, I'm starting with my crews, my firefighters, my EMTs, my medics. Those lives are priority. Then the civilian lives come into play. We're there to save people's lives. That's what we do, and property. The next one on that list is search and rescue. The fire that Errol spoke of this morning, when they showed up, they had a serious fire with a lot of smoke and limited resources. But the first effort was probably search and rescue there. Unfortunately, 2 young children died. But search and rescue is a priority, life safety, keeping our people safe, and then going in and helping others become extracted from the fire. Then water on the fire is a priority. And then safety concerns across the board. You're always thinking safety. I want you to remember this. And if Mike were to do a quiz, I think this would be a quiz question. Always anticipate the unexpected. As the incident commander, you've got to be thinking ahead. You need to visualize. You need to plan ahead. You need to kind of understand what the fire behavior is doing. Are we making progress? Is it getting worse? But always anticipate the unexpected. Next slide. In the United States, and if you Google incident commander checklist, you will find a lot of information, probably too much information. However, you can break it down. You have to wear many hats in Kenya or Mombasa or wherever you are. But you should understand the initial actions have to take place. Not everything on this list will be part of your fire, but it is part of my fire because number one listed that first bullet is acknowledge dispatch. You have call centers. They're going to call you with information. Sometimes the information you get initially is not enough, and they may get another call saying, oh, there's two people trapped. That might be additional information. All of that is predetermined before you get on scene. Whatever you could get ahead of time is going to help you plan as the incident commander what attack we're going to do and what needs to be done on scene. You need to make sure that you identify the safest approach. You might have a staging area. You have to, when you get on scene, assume command. I'll say Chief 5 has command at 639 Succotash Road. I'm in the incident commander. Everybody knows that. We fortunately in the United States, we have radios on all of our trucks and our personnel. Many of them have radios. You do not have that, but you do have a process and you have to stay within your process. When you get to the scene, if you can, we conduct what we call a 360-degree size up. We walk around that structure that's on fire. As I'm waiting for my units, my first apparatus to get in, I'm trying to get a size up. I want to make sure that I could see what's going on, where there may be hazards. If I cannot do that, I maybe will delegate someone in my area, one of my other firefighters or someone that's there first to make that 360. It's good to get a look around the entire structure. In your case, you may not be able to physically do that because of the unplanned settlements that you have. But you need to get a gauge of a size up. Now, later on, I'm going to show a picture of a structure fire that when I come on scene, I kind of get a gauge. I kind of draw out on my board what I have, And in the United States, when we look at a building, a structure, we label the sides and the front door of that structure would be the alpha side. And we go alphabetically clockwise. The left side, if you will, would be the Bravo side. And the rear side, if it's a four-sided structure, would be the Charlie side. And then the right side is the Delta side. So when I pull up, I might say I have a two-story commercial wood frame structure with heavy fire on the Alpha Delta side. That statement tells my arriving units what we're looking at and what I tell the call center what's going on. Next slide. I always teach the three words at the top: safety, communications, and teamwork. In that order, safety is critical all the way, all the time, prioritized. Communications before we get to the scene, on scene, throughout the scene. And then teamwork, the crews working in coordination with each other. Down the left side is the list. If you were to Google Incident Commander checklist, this would be the full checklist. We looked at the initial actions, number one, in the previous slide. But then let's take a peek at some of these others we will be covering. Establish command and communications. I said it was Chief 5 on scene, 639 Succotash Road. I established command. And we have communications. I have radios for dispatch. I may say fire ground will be channel 6, and I identify that. Number three is throughout the entire process, from dispatch right on through to demobilization and termination, life safety issues. And remember what I said earlier, expect the unexpected. Next one is fire control. This picture that you're looking at is actually a fire we had back in February. And that's pretty much what we saw when we rolled in. The first unit in saw heavy, heavy fire, started on the Alpha Delta side. And, this was an actual response that I'm going to use throughout today's presentation. Incident organization. Again, you have one single engine pulling into this with 4 to 6 people. You've got a lot of challenges, but you still have to cover as an incident commander all these checklists. Can we have the slides after the training? Mike, can you answer that?
Yep, I'll talk about how you can find them.
Okay. Incident organization is critical throughout the process. And if the fire is progressing, or if we're maintaining the fire, those are signs that I have to have as a benchmark as the incident commander. Ongoing command responsibilities. There's a lot going on. Always in the back of my mind, I always have life safety as my critical resource. It's essential. And so if I'm putting people into this building that you're looking at, obviously I don't want anybody on the right half of that building. When we look at life safety, this is a commercial structure. This was like 3 in the morning. So it was a restaurant. There was no one inside. So if I'm going to consider the risk to reward, there's no one inside. Do I need to do a search and rescue? I might want to take a look on the left side of this, on the Bravo side of this, maybe quickly. But this was called in by a truck driver who was delivering supplies to this restaurant, and he arrived very early in the morning, and he was actually napping in his truck, and he woke up when he heard the crackle. That's what woke him up. So there was no one in the restaurant. So that life safety concern for any civilians was pretty much out the window. Now I've got to consider my own people. What am I going to do for risk to reward on this fire? The next one is the benchmarks, and we're going to talk about the benchmarks later. Very important. I gave you the top 5 later on. We'll talk about that later. Maydays and emergency operations. These things happen. They happen rarely, but they happen. And then overhaul and investigation. We take a look at that, and we want to know what caused this fire and be able to prevent other fires in the future because we've learned from other disasters. And then demobilization and termination. There's a lot there. We're going to cover some of that, but not all of that. But again, you could Google that list and look a little further in your own time. But again, let's move on to the next slide. This happened in your neighborhoods. This Mayday emergency operation was an explosion. You never know when these things happen. When I did the 360 of that building, that restaurant, I couldn't do a full 360 because it was on the coast. So it was right on the water, but I could get a good gauge of what's going on. I already had a good gauge when I pulled up, but I'm looking for, when I do a 360, I'm looking for hazards. It might be a propane tanks. Where's the location of those? I don't know if in this picture we're looking at if that was a gas explosion, what kind of an explosion that was. But these are things you look for in a 360 is potential hazards that could develop into an emergency operations or a Mayday situation. These firefighters know there's a problem because they heard that explosion and they felt that heat and they're getting out of there. Okay. We're going to talk today about accountability. I don't know if you use accountability, but we're going to show you a means of doing some accountability. Because here's 4 firefighters running from that scene. I don't know how many firefighters were at that scene that were in danger. I'm hoping that everybody that's running out got out. Everyone must go home. Next slide. You have to multitask on your scenes. We're talking about incident commander, structure fire. You have to multitask. You have to wear many hats. All the essential benchmarks must be met. And again, I'm going to give you the top 5 later. But you must prioritize your response and what you assign your crews to do. Always in the back of your mind, life safety is a must. Multitasking is what you do. Here's my board. This is my incident command board on in the slide picture. You can see the little boxes, and there's a ring at the bottom. There's rings all around this board. So team A, team alpha, if you will, top left corner, there's a ring attached up there. And what we use, and I think I have a slide later on. These are my tags. There you go. Mike, you're so good. These are my roll tags. I'm 314. I'm in station 3, and I'm the 14th firefighter that was assigned to that station. So I'm 314. We have a 2-tag system. These are my accountability tags. And what we do is when I get on the engine, I take one of my tags and we have an engine ring. So everybody that gets on the engine puts the first tag on the ring. So if there's 4 of us on that engine, there's 4 tags on that ring. That engine 3 is accountable for 4 people. The second tag that I have when I get on scene, if I'm a firefighter, the assignment will come through my officer, maybe my captain, and he'll say, we have the attack line. And there's 3 of us. So we're going to clip our 3 tags together. The 3 of us, this is our crew, the captain, myself, and another firefighter. And we're then going to go to this accountability board, and we're the attack team. So that might be Team Bravo, not so much the one that you're showing in the picture, because Team A, Alpha, is probably the search and rescue team, okay? Team Bravo will be the fire attack team, which I'll clip on where it says Team B over on the right side of the board, which you cannot see. So the 3 of us are clipped on there. Let's say there's 2 of us that are two of our other firefighters that are on Team A Alpha. They would be the search and rescue team. And I'm going to show you this a little bit later, but I want you to know that's the accountability board. These are the tags, okay? Accountability tags. Next slide. Now here, going back, as your fire, your response, your level of response, an emergency response, it could be simply a pen and a piece of paper. As the IC, you are responsible for everything, period. If it goes great, you get all the credit. If something goes wrong, you get all of the blame. You're in charge, so you're going to make sure every time you have an incident, you have your game face on and you're doing everything according to your training. The incident commander must understand the initial essentials that are listed in the middle. Resource assignments, life safety, search and rescue, water on the fire, safety concerns. Structure fire, if you follow those things, you're in pretty good shape. Those are your must-dos. Life safety is your priority goal. And your crews are first and the public comes next. Next slide. We serve our residents. We're there. We have a lot of passion, dedication, training, train. This is all to protect our people. Next slide. This is the second area of that checklist. Establishing command and communications. We look at attack modes, incident modes. Offensive attacks, we're very aggressive. We're going to go inside. We're going to do search and rescue. We're going to have fire attack. We're going to have backup line. We're going to have a RIT team in place. We're going to have all these things, depend upon our resources. You may have to wear multiple hats. Offensive attack, it could be a defensive attack. Go back to my structure fire picture with half the buildings on fire. That's probably a defensive attack. We're attacking that from the outside. Okay, we may get into the third one, transitional. If we're attacking from the outside, we're knocking down a lot of that fire. We then may be able to go inside and have more of an offensive attack from the inside. So think about it as the incident commander. Risk to reward. Are you going to put your firefighters in that building? Is it safe to put them in that building? Is there a reason to put them in that building? There's two victims that we know of in this morning's fire that Errol spoke of. We're going to go in and save those people. And that's going to be a search and rescue. And we're going to put more risk on us for the reward that's there. So think about offensive attacks, defensive attacks, or maybe transitional. Offensive is going in and saving people and putting fire out on the inside. The big fire I had from the outside that I showed you, that commercial structure, we need to knock some of that fire down before we can put our people at harm's way. We established command and we set a radio channel of what we use. Is I use channel 6 as my fire ground. Channel 1 might be my dispatch channel. Request additional alarms or assignments as needed, resources. Think of that airport picture. When they had that fire going, they needed more people. They needed to bring in the military. They needed to bring in whatever they have in surrounding areas to help them out. Establish accountability system early. Okay, your accountability system might be a command board, piece of paper, and then whatever you can think about that you remember that picture of those 4 firefighters running from that explosion. How many people do you have in that area? How do you know? Maybe you're writing their names down or their roll number, their tag number down. Some kind of an accountability system. Next slide. Okay, when I'm working a fire as the incident commander, in my mind, these are the things that I have always continuously come back to. My focus bullet points. My crew integrity. I know they're operating. They may be operating inside. They may be on the first floor, the second floor, the 19th floor. I know where they are. I know it from my accountability board and what I've assigned them to do. I need to have crew integrity. I need to have an accountability system, my board and my tags. I need to know when they are on an SCBA, a self-contained breathing apparatus, I need to know what their air management is because they only have so many minutes on that bottle, on that cylinder. I need to know the resource assignments, and I need to know if I have enough resources on scene. And then there's the benchmarks that I always check on, and we're going to talk more about that later. This is the same fire. That picture was the same fire. That was a different side, quite different than what we saw in the front on the alpha side. Next slide. Here's my checklist from that fire. I'm with the Union Fire District, South Kingstown, Rhode Island, in the United States. There was a report of a structure fire about 3 in the morning at 629 Succotash Road, which was a restaurant. When I look at the board, and it's really hard. Mike, can you blow that up a little? I don't know if we have that capability to make the little.
No, not
All
really.
right. Well, when we look at the board on the top left side, which Team A Alpha is my search and rescue. I had 2 people, and I put them in on the left side of that structure just to make sure. Even though we had a report, there was no one there. We were just double checking. I then had on the right is engine 3 fire attack, and I had 3 people on that line. They were not going in initially because we had to put some water on the fire from the outside. I established command. I had a water supply established, and then I kind of looked through and I went through whatever processes I had to do, and as that was a big fire, I needed to have a RIT team available in the event that something went wrong, and then I also had to have. In this case, ventilation wasn't necessary on the right side of that structure, that commercial restaurant, but the left side we may have needed some ventilation. And then I had to secure any utilities, the electricity or any gas or anything like that that could lead to a major explosion or some other catastrophe. So these are the things I kind of set up. initially over the first 25 minutes or so. That's what my board. I'm recording what I'm doing. You can see I have a safety officer assigned. I had operations. I had my radio channels at the bottom. These are notes that kind of keep me in check as to what I'm doing and what times. I also documented the times. Why do I need the times? Well, my fire attack, when they went in at 311 or whatever that number is, I'm thinking about air management. Okay. And if they're inside that structure on air, they're using that air. I have to have a gauge of I'm going to have to replace that team in 20, 25, depending upon the size of the bottle, so many minutes from now. So I'm thinking about all that. So if you look at the board, it has a lot of information, but it's good information. And again, piece of paper and a pen will do the same thing on scene. Next slide. Uh, the bottom right is our rehab. Okay. That was a big fire. We were going to be there for a number of hours. When someone uses a bottle, they come out and they go into rehab. I set up rehab at 3:32, which is just about 25, 27 minutes into the fire. That's about when those first bottles are going to be used up, and they're going to, the low alarms are going to go off, and they're going to have to come out. They'll go to rehab. Rehab is in the bottom right-hand corner. I had Special Hazards 1 established rehab at 3:32. They're going to come out of that fire. We're going to get vital signs on them, and we're going to make sure that they're okay. Once they get rehab, we'll put another bottle on them, and if I have to get them back in the fire, I will. If I have other firefighters, I'll let them rest longer. Next slide. Essential tasks. Again, going back to that resource assignments and all those 6 items. The essential tasks are all listed on this accountability board. I have search and rescue. I have an attack line. I have a backup line, and I have a RIT team in place pretty much as soon as possible. I have a safety officer as soon as I can get someone, and that safety officer is taking a look at the whole situation because I can only see from my location where I am in the incident command post, from my command vehicle, I can only see one dimension of what's going on. That safety officer could get a good look all the way around the building and be able to tell me the progress and making sure that our crews are safe. Next slide. Here's your essential tasks that you have, your checklist. What are your essential tasks? Search and rescue, fire, fire and water on the fire, all those things. Reevaluate the fire as it's going. Are we making progress? If not, we need to make some resource adjustments, but always keep in mind the risk to reward as you go. These are your firefighters, your medics, your EMTs. Make sure you're not putting them in harm's way if there's no need to do that. Here's a detailed IC checklist. Think about these. We've talked about these so far, but let's look at them individually. If you can remember a slide, this is a pretty good slide. Primary search, water on the fire, ventilation, controlling the utilities, electricity, gas, secondary search. The difference between a primary search and a secondary search is the secondary search is very detailed. Primary search, we're looking initially to go through all those rooms and clear it. Secondary search is being a little bit more particular. Fire under control, stopping the loss, and then tactical shifts, because not every fire goes according to plan. You may have to make adjustments. In the fire service, we have a plan A, B, C, D, whatever we need. Next slide. You're the IC. You have to continuously think. Think about these. These are your top 5. This is what I want you to walk away from. Remember, I said earlier, expect the unexpected. But if you can remember this, take a picture of this slide. Crew integrity, accountability, air management, resources, and benchmarks. Those are your top five. And I am going to break the benchmarks down later, but they make sense to you at this point. I know if I have this, well, if I have a fire, like my commercial restaurant, and I have all those people involved with this, mitigation of this fire, I am always thinking about their lives, my crew's integrity. I'm thinking about, do I know where they are? I'm thinking about how much time they've been on because we've been on for like 26 minutes. It's about time that a low alarm's going to go off. And what am I going to do? Do I have another crew ready to replace them? Okay, that's I'm thinking air management. I am thinking about how much PSI they have in their bottles. I'm going to be close. Okay. But I also have that fire attack in there. I have a backup line in there. And I may have other, depend upon the scenario, other crews inside, all on air. Our search and rescue, I've got two of those guys in there, and they're working hard making that primary search. Okay. I need to think about my resources, and I may have to strike another alarm if I don't have enough people. And the benchmarks will cover. That's your top five list. Next. Attack modes. Okay, look at the tactics. All right, you got in this picture, you've got resource assignments. You got water on the fire. I don't know if there was any reason to put anybody in there because I can't see the rest of the structure for search and rescue. But you've got water on the fire. This looks like to me, from what I see, somewhat of a defensive attack. Try to put some of that fire out before it gets worse. Okay. So you've got maybe search and rescue in this case, water on the fire, and you've got safety concerns. Okay. I don't know all the details on that picture that I picked up, but I do believe that these are attack mode tactics. Now, in this situation, it may have to change. If we're not making gains on this fire with that line, we may need a bigger line. We may need another line. So whatever the case is, you have to always wear those multiple hats and change your attack mode tactics as you go. Next. The third section on the checklist was life safety. Determining occupancy, if it's a structure, time of day matters, what's going on, what kind of response there is, what kind of exposures there are there people trapped? Can we confirm that they're all out? They're all life safety is critical. You must order primary searches if the conditions allow it. Can you put your people in there to save someone? Risk to reward. You risk a lot to save a lot, and you risk nothing to save nothing. So think about your people, your life safety. And if it's a situation where it's not tenable that someone could possibly live in, you're not going to try to go inside to get them out. Ensure protection of egress pass. How can we get out of there? That's why when we send in an attack line, we send a backup line to protect the way out. If there's a stairwell, we want to protect that stairwell from burning because that might be the only way out for the attack crew. So protect those egress paths as you go. And again, I said earlier, we had a rapid intervention team, a RIT team, or a FAST team, or a RIC, rapid intervention crew, whatever any district calls it. But those are there to protect our people. If we have a Mayday called and there's something happens, we're going to deploy that RIT team immediately to get our people out. Okay, so that's important. Next slide. Your initial attack, what is essential within the first few minutes? Reevaluate as you go, the resource assignments, and always considering your risk to reward. So when you look at the first few minutes, talk about life safety, your people first, then the public. Well, let's go in and save someone. That's what we're here to do. But search and rescue, water on the fire, protecting that line, and making sure we have to ventilate. Whatever the tactics are determined on that fire is what you have to do as the incident commander. Next slide. When you look at the incident command checklist, this is the commercial structure fire, that restaurant with our initial walk in and kind of get an observation of what we're going to do. All right, we had to establish a water supply because we needed a lot of water for this fire. We had an ocean. If we had to use the ocean water, we would, although we don't want to have to flush out those pumps later, but we've done that when we had to. All right, we happen to have enough engines on this scene that we had quite a bit of water. So we established a water supply. We had rehab assigned as soon as we could. And then there's the personal accountability report, or a PAR check. A PAR check is really important to me as the incident commander. If I have search and rescue of 2 people, the attack line inside of 3 people, the backup line inside with 3 people, and I have people on the roof venting, I'm talking about a minimum of 14 people with my safety officer. If I've got 14 people on scene and I'm trying to work through the crew integrity, I have to make sure from time to time to check in with them. And our officers know that if I call for a PAR check, personal accountability report, I'm asking them to tell me the status of their crew. And I also want to know who has the lowest amount of air, because it gives me a gauge of what I'm going to need in a few minutes when I have to change them out. I don't want to hear low alarms going off unless I'm prepared for that. As the incident commander, air management's always in the back of my mind. My PAR check is going to confirm where they're at. So when I call for a PAR check as the incident commander, I'm going to do it at a point where the fire seems to be in check, but it might be some 20, 22 minutes into the time that they're on air, using the air on their SCBA. So the PAR check, I call a PAR check. I'll say, command PAR check. I'll say engine 3. Well, engine 3, when they heard PAR check, they're going to check. The 3 of them are going to let their officer know how much air they have. They're going to check their gauge, and they're going to see that they may have 1,600 psi and 1,400, and then the captain might have 1,800 psi. So what the captain's going to do when I say engine 3 PAR check, captain's going to say all accounted for, doing well, low air, a psi lowest 1,400. I know at that point that they have a little less than half a bottle left, and I can then plan for engine 3. And then I'll hear the same thing from ladder 1 or engine 10. And I'm getting the PAR check from my 4 crews or whatever I have inside. So I know from the personal accountability report that they're all accounted for, they're all doing well, and they have this much air in the least amount of bottle of that crew. PAR checks are very important periodically. It keeps me confirmed as to where we are with progress. Remember, your crews, as the incident commander, are your eyes and ears on the inside. Next slide. All right, when we look at the PAR check and we look at the crews and we've monitored their air use and we know if there's progress, that captain has given me an indicator as to if we're making headway on this fire. Okay. It also will tell me that conditions are worsening and they may have to back out. So they have that opportunity to give me a gauge as to where we're at. And that's the PAR check. That confirms progress or lack of for me as the IC. Next. When you look at resource assignments and you look at all of the different tactics that we have to cover, we have, as I just said, the search and rescue crew, your fire attack crew, the initial line, your backup crew is protection and egress, your rapid intervention crew is outside. In that fire, we had them on the Bravo side. The ventilation crew, you may have to coordinate with your attack lines when you ventilate a roof. Securing utilities, I want to have a safety officer on a complex fire as soon as possible. And then there's the operations officer that's going to kind of coordinate everything on the inside while I'm on the outside as incident commander. Those are my resource assignments. Next. When you look at search and rescue, stretching a line, and safety, I don't care where you are in the world as a firefighter. These are the things that we have to work on. Getting water on the fire, saving people, and keeping everybody life safe. Keep it in check. Next. Fourth area is fire control. Again, water on the fire and coordinating ventilation, and then monitoring fire behavior. Look for changes. Look for potential flashover problems. Look for potential explosive problems, electrical problems. If you secure the utilities, sometimes it's one of those things you try to get as soon as possible. So ensure the exposure protections. You have many, 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 many exposure problems with your unplanned settlements. If you get a fire as you had this morning, that could extend to other homes and other people. So be aware of that. Fire control. Next. Again, you walk into a major complex, that airport fire. I'm sure the incident commander, when that airport fire was going on, he or she knew they have a major incident here and they need to begin with getting more resources. I need more help. This is too big for me to handle. You got to think about right away your resources, and if you don't have enough, how can you get more? Next. Number 5 on the checklist is incident organization. You may have to, if it's a major complex fire, you may have to have different divisions. You may have to assign your safety officer. You want to establish a rehab group. You want to make sure you have your RIT team in place and all those other factors. And then down the road, if it's a big, big fire, you may need a PIO or liaison or staging managers. Depends upon the size and what's going on with that structure fire. Next. Again, I look at this picture and it says so much to me. It's like this is devastating, devastating. But as an incident commander, if you think and you work your training and you apply it, you're going to make things better for this person and everyone else, especially your own crews. Next. Risk versus reward. I've talked about that 3 times, maybe 4 times. Risk nothing to save nothing. Don't put your people in if it's not worth there's nothing to save. Risk a lot to save a lot. Those 2 kids this morning, I would have been the first one in the door to try to save their lives. Monitor the fire behavior. Is it progressively getting worse? Change your tactics. Pull your people out. Go from an offensive attack to a defensive attack. Nobody's inside. They're going to rebuild that structure later. This restaurant is in the process now of being rebuilt. They ripped the whole thing down. So, offensive attack, defensive attack, transitional attack. Think about life safety. Your people first. Next. What chemicals are present? When you look at smoke, make sure that if you have SCBAs and that your firefighters are in the smoke, make sure they are on air, breathing air, not with a face mask hanging. Cancer in the fire service is really, really bad. Don't be breathing smoke if you have an SCBA. Next. 6 is ongoing command responsibilities. Make sure you have a presence, command presence. You are the incident commander. Take charge. Continually evaluate the risk versus benefit of what's going on. You need to track your personnel and assignments for that command board, piece of paper and a pen. Make sure you know where they are, what they're doing, if they're making progress, what the air management is, and you may have to have a par check to make sure you keep that in line. Request additional resources if your crews are overextended or if you just don't have enough crew. And then monitor the structural ability and stability and the burn time. That fire that we had in that commercial restaurant, there was a lot of fire load, there was a lot of fire, and that structure was becoming, unstable in certain areas. So you need to make sure that you're not in a collapse zone and we're not going to have issues. Next. You may have to go to a defensive attack mode, and it's okay to fight a fire from the outside. It's okay if you don't have enough resources initially to start from the outside and work yourself in. Go from a defensive attack mode, and if you can safely go to an offensive attack mode, then do it. Next. Benchmarks. This is an important one for maybe a picture of this slide. These are the tell-alls. The primary search is complete if it warrants you to be able to put your people in safely. Fire is under control. Always a good thing. Water on the fire. Obviously, that would be before the fire is under control. Ventilation complete. Yeah. In many cases, it self-ventilates. It's already burned a hole through the roof. Utilities are controlled. Gas and electric. Secondary search is complete. Your loss is stopped, and part checks have been complete. Okay. After major shifts or any kind of a mayday, you need to have a part check. So any kind of a major tactical shifts and the timing warrants it, you really need to know when to call a part check. You don't want, if you've got radio traffic, in our case, we use radios. If you've got radio traffic, you're going to let that radio traffic go. And then when there's a lull, you're going to call for a part check. Because you need to confirm as the IC what's going on. And the part check does that. PAR stands for Personal Accountability Reports. Next. All right. When you get, no matter what the situation is, you have to kind of, as the incident commander, get a good size up right away. And if you have to, in this case, this picture, I don't have enough information. I need to do a 360 to see what's going on prior to my crews going in because there's not enough showing from what I can see. And I really need to know. There may be heavy fire on the Charlie side, the rear side of this building. So make sure you get a good size up whenever you go in before you put your men and women in harm's way. Next. Number 8 is Mayday. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. When you have a problem, someone's fall through a roof or something collapses on them, we want to make sure we communicate. And, in our case, in the United States, we will call a Mayday. We immediately will deploy the RIT team to go and get those people out. We will then continue the fire suppression, but we may have to refocus it a little bit because the area of the Mayday, we're going to kind of focus on life safety of our people. Then it's going to change, and we may have to call in additional resources at that time. Mayday's called. I'm thinking I'm going to need another ambulance on this scene, because, or maybe two. I'm going to call for whatever I can get because a Mayday really, it gets our attention. It's a red flag, and we want to save our people. That's priority. If we have to take out walls to go in and save them, we're going to do that. That's what the RIT team is trained to do. So I'm going to deploy that RIT team. I'm going to maintain communications with the crews that are affected in the Mayday. We're going to prioritize the channel so that we can make that rescue. So that's a Mayday or emergency operations. Next. Again, it's in the smoke, the carcinogens, and I want you thinking about cancer and the fire service and trying to protect and stay out of that smoke as best you can. Make sure you know your wind direction and everything else and attack it in the right aspect. Next. Here's a list of safety concerns. Keep your mask on. Remove and clean contaminated gear. Wash your gear if you've been in a fire. Clean your neck and face and arms and groin thoroughly after each fire. If you could take a shower within the hour, is what we kind of preach here in the United States. Change into new clothes. Regularly launder your turnout gear and wash your hood. And every time you have experience in an IDLH or a hot zone, make sure you reduce the carcinogen exposures. Cancer is a bad thing. Next. Number nine, and we have two more sections, and I think we're pretty good on time. That's good. Ensure the fire is out. Check for any extensions, other exposures. Make sure you rotate your crews to rehab as you have extended fire scenes. Secure the scene for fire investigation. We do a lot with that. Again, I said earlier, we want to learn from our previous fires so that we can kind of control and push out our fire prevention to our civilians and our communities so that we can reduce fires, period. And then, contact the utilities of building owners and representatives as soon as you get the opportunity to make contact so that you can then firm up a plan for after you have terminated that fire and turned it over to the business owner. Next. All right, life safety again is our priority. That's the airport fire after the fact, and there's a lot of damage there. I don't know the exact write-up of what happened in that situation, but there was major fire. I'm hopeful that there were no lives lost across the board. I don't know the fact on that, but that's as the IC, you as the IC, life safety is your priority. Your crews first, then our public. Next. What hat do you wear? Well, I used to wear the hat on the right, because it was cool. Chief Mike understands that. A dirty helmet and it's a badge of honor. Well, we've learned a lot with research in the fire service about cancer, and we really need to have a clean gear, clean environment. Your helmet needs to be clean as well. So, if I can impress upon you, when you get all sooty and things on your gear, you want to get that stuff off because that off gases and those are exposures to carcinogens. So, what we're looking at on the right is carcinogen heaven, and on the left is you're protecting yourself. So, keep yourself clear after a fire. Next. The last breakdown is demobilization and termination. That is the fire, the end result of the fire from that restaurant on the right, that picture. There wasn't much left in the end on that section of that. That was the right side, if you will, looking at it. But begin releasing units that are not used. Conduct your incident debrief or a hot wash. We use some forms that we utilize in the incident command system, 201, 214 forms. Some of us use that, some of us don't. Then you terminate and your command, and when all resources are clear. And you've turned it over to the business owner or the resident, whomever. Next. I think, wow, look at that. It's 9 o'clock. uh, we're good. And Mike, I think we hit the mark on the timing. So, Mike, I'll turn it back to you. I'm pleased that you're all here and honored to be a part of this. So, thank you so much.
All righty, thank you, Kevin. Great lesson there. Great review of the incident command system. Lots of great talking points to think about. In just a couple moments here, we're going to open up the floor to some questions. So please stick around for that. I'm going to wrap up sort of the formal portion of our training here with a big thank you to Chief Kevin Quinn for coming and sharing his morning with us to present this. We hope to have you back to do more of these with us in the future. Great job.
I'll be
And
back.
and thank you to all of you out there. We understand that you're taking your time and your bundles to take this extra training, get yourself refreshed, learn something new, and try to better your community. So really appreciate that as well. Thank you to all of you for taking that time. We don't take you all for granted. Uh, the registration link for next year's training is up on our website. If you head over to www.africafiremission.org, go to the resources and the training materials tab. The top of the screen there is the registration link for the 2026 classes. We have one more next week is our final topic for the year. We'll take the last 2 weeks of the year off, and then we'll start again in January on the 7th. But head over there, check out that link, get yourself registered for next year's. If you know anybody that doesn't attend these, go ahead and pass that information along to them so they can join us as well. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. Hope to see you all for our final session next week.